Part 2, addressing the misconceptions. So as I told in the beginning, like I did a survey and I'm going to be like sort of analyzing like the results and like common misconceptions. So I asked which of these are the correct diagnoses, and I'm just going to go over the mistakes that people made. So Asperger's syndrome, a lot of people think that this is an actual diagnosis. I think perhaps it is still diagnosed in some people, but essentially it's a really problematic term because Hans Asperger was a Nazi like psychologist who was associated heavily with eugenics, and he would send like autistic kids to be like killed essentially. He did do a lot of research into autism, but he would send autistic children to die. He would choose which ones he wanted to die. He was also very anti-Semitic, so just the name is problematic. But also like Asperger's syndrome used to be regarded as like a type of autism, but it was diagnosed very interchangeably with what was called at the time autistic disorder, and different diagnosticians like sort of diagnosed them differently, and like they would send someone to like different doctors. They will diagnose them differently between autistic disorder and Asperger's syndrome, and there were no like real differences they found, so they just removed Asperger's syndrome from the diagnostic criteria entirely. So yeah. High functioning autism. This is also not correct terminology. It's quite offensive to suggest that like autistic people could be high or low functioning, because high functioning, it kind of dismisses the struggles of some autistic people, because just telling someone that they function highly but they still have autism is kind of dismissive, you know? And low functioning, it could also like result in stereotypes, and basically a lot of autistic people don't like functioning labels, and they're not in the diagnostic criteria, so yeah, they're not used. Okay, which of these can cause autism? So first we're going to go into vaccines. Vaccines absolutely do not cause autism, right? There have been rumors. Like, those rumors have been heavily debunked, right? It began in, like, the 90s, I believe. There was this scientist who conducted a study where he basically tested less than 20 children after they had the MMR vaccine. And basically, he stated that within, like, a few hours or to a few months, like, very vague kind of time period, they began to exhibit, like, autistic traits after they got the vaccine. But it turned out that, like, he was working with lawyers that were trying to sue the vaccine companies, and basically it was all really problematic. That guy lost his medical license. There have been a lot of other people trying to find if vaccines can cause autism, and it's been, like, safely debunked now that they do not. Trauma, autism isn't a trauma-related disorder. It's not a mental disorder. It's not an emotional disorder. It's a developmental disorder. And it's not caused by trauma because, of course, you have to have lived to have trauma, you know, but autism is like from when you're born, like, yeah. Okay, which of these are traits of autism? This one's quite interesting. So lack of empathy. There's a lot of stereotypes that like autistic people lack empathy. That's not true at all. There's this thing called the double empathy problem, which is essentially like autistic people struggle to empathize with neurotypicals and vice versa. Like neurotypicals struggle to empathize with autistic people, which causes like issues, and it causes this stereotype that autistic people lack empathy, when really it's kind of like a struggle to empathize on both sides, as well as like autistic people struggle to show their empathy, you know? Even if they feel like they empathize with someone, they struggle to like show it through facial expressions, through gestures, because it's harder to convey emotions for autistic people. Extreme intelligence, there's obviously this like savant stereotype. Savant syndrome is a real thing, but I think around like 10% of autistic people are savants, so most of them are not. Most people are not a little young Sheldon. So this stereotype that like autistic people have extreme intelligence is really not true. A lot of autistic people are intelligent, but it's not because of their autism. And some autistic people aren't intelligent. Like an autistic person's worth shouldn't be depending on if they're intelligent or not. And there's this kind of idea that being intelligent makes up for these like quote negative autistic traits. No, autistic people can be intelligent just like people can be intelligent, but it's not caused by autism. Tics. Autistic people don't experience tics. I mean, if they have a tic disorder, then yeah, they'll experience tics. But autism itself does not cause tics. Tics can be confused with stimming. Stimming is like, it's actually called self-stimulatory behavior, but it's commonly referred to as stimming. It's when autistic people will like...
Actually, it doesn't have to be autistic people. Anyone can stim.
But it's more common in autistic people. It's just like gestures that help to like stimulate themselves. Like it could be flapping hands, it could be bobbing their head, it could be like jumping, it could be like even small things like clicking their fingers, like biting their nails, any kind of gesture, or even it could be like looking at something. Anything that like kind of stimulates their senses, it can be stimming, but it's not tics. Depression. So some people did think that depression is a trait from autism. It's not. A lot of autistic people are actually depressed. Like there was a 2019 analysis which estimated that autistic people are actually 4 times more likely to experience depression, and like approximately 40% of autistic adults had depression. So yes, they do often co-occur, but autism does not cause depression. Depression is not part of autism. It's just because, you know, autistic people struggle in society. There's a lot of discrimination. Things are not built for us. So because of that, a lot of autistic people are depressed. Like they feel like they have to mask, and life is just generally a lot harder. So yeah, they often co-occur, but it's not like autism causes depression. So I asked which of these better represents the autism spectrum. So you can see option 1, which is a graph from like less autistic to more autistic, and option 2 has different like kind of areas where there's different levels. So option 1, it's a harmful way to look at things. You can't be less or more autistic. It's just, are you autistic or are you not? There's this stereotype that like everyone is on this spectrum. It's not true. You're either autistic or you're not. Autism is a spectrum, but it doesn't mean that everyone's on that spectrum. Autistic people are on that spectrum. And that spectrum is more complex than just less or more autistic. It's different areas of the DSM-5. I read the criteria earlier. It's how much you experience of each area. Different autistic people experience autism differently, but it's not more or less autistic. So which of these correctly describes autism? Some people put a learning disability. Autism is not a learning disability. It's a developmental disability. So fun facts about learning disabilities. The UK and the US have different definitions of what a learning disability is. In the UK, they call a reduced intellectual ability, for example, like Down syndrome, a learning disability. And yeah, for learning disabilities, by the UK definition, like support is kind of needed with developing skills, understanding info, and like interacting with others. So that's what they call an intellectual disability in the US. So yeah, it's called learning disability in the UK and intellectual disability in the US. Whereas in the US, they use learning disability to describe like a disorder that affects the ability to like speak, write, do maths, attention, or coordination, like dyslexia and dysgraphia. But in Britain, they call that like a learning difficulty. Yeah, so that's just a fun fact. Yeah. Special ability, autism is not a special ability.
You don't, like, it's not.
Some autistic people can have like abilities that you could consider are special, but that's not really good terminology to use. So I'm editing the video right now, and I kind of wanted to add some more onto that one because I feel like I didn't explain it as well as I could have done. Basically, there are very talented autistic people. There are autistic people who are very good at things, and often that can be helped by their autism because autism can give like really focused interests and a lot of motivation to engage in your interests. So yeah, autism can help in some people when it comes to their abilities in some areas, but it's not necessarily like that for everyone. And of course, even autistic people who are very talented in certain areas, they're still autistic, they're still disabled. Also, I wanted to note that even though autistic people can have really focused interests and become really intelligent regarding their interests, often these interests are not beneficial to them in society. And even if they know so much about this one thing, it's not going to help. For example, a lot of autistic people have interest in a piece of media, like a movie or a show or a book, and just being interested in that one piece of media and knowing everything about that one piece of media is not going to help in the grand scheme of things. So even though they can be really intelligent in that area, it's not going to help them academically, it's not going to help them when it comes to employment. And autistic people can't really choose what they're going to be interested in, so it's not always necessarily going to help. In fact, it could even hinder them because they're being so focused in this thing that doesn't matter when they should be interested in other things like academics. So yeah, it's a disability, okay? Emotional disorder, no. Autistic people do like experience strong emotions, but emotional disorders are like bipolar, BPD. Like autism isn't, centered around emotions, So I also like little honorable mention this question where I asked, can you name any celebrities or famous figures who are autistic? 3 people, I think, put Albert Einstein.
No, Albert Einstein is not diagnosed as autistic.
Like, there are, like, autistic traits that people have kind of noticed in him, and people speculate that he's autistic, but he was never diagnosed, and for most of his life, autism wasn't even discovered. Because of that, he wasn't diagnosed. We can't ever know for sure if he was autistic, but a lot of websites kind of paint him as, like, a famous autistic person. We don't know if he's autistic. We can't assume that. There are traits that people saw in him. For example, this delayed speech development. He only started to speak when he was 3 or 4. Repetitive speech patterns, like struggles to socialize with his peers, intense focus on his interests. But, it's misleading to say that he is autistic when we don't actually know.